Welcome to the Lost Signals Discusses Literature,
where we apply the revolutionary Mott skill
to classic and contemporary works of prose.
So, join us once again, won't you?
Hello, and welcome back to Lost Signals Discusses / Reviews Literature. Tonight, I am your host, Scott Thurlow, and I'm here with Stephen Amosi.
And I'm here to clean up all of the mishaps that we might have on
our
this
space
episode.
joke, yes. And Christopher Morgan.
Just floating in zero gravity.
Yes, and tonight we're doing an episode, or a short story called The Janitor in Space, which was by Amber Sparks from July of 2014. I unfortunately forget exactly the publication where it was, but it was on a list of like modern-ish, very well-done short stories that
We'll
I
have
found.
it for you in the notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the liner notes later. But I will go on to the logline, which I've come up with. In space, no one can hear you clean, which I think is fucking amazing. So before we get into it, this is a very short story. It's like 3 pages or so. So that may segue into what Steve-O may or may not have to say about the plot of this story.
Yes, so it's not a plot, I guess. I mean, there's a overall feeling, but basically this is the story of a woman who cleans up a space station, and a lot of it is about her trying to... Well, we find out it's about her trying to get over her sins, which seemingly were brought on...
Some sort of troubled past, it seems.
Yeah, which seemingly were brought on by a traumatic childhood event.
Or perhaps a number of them, a chain of them even.
And, yes.
It's kind of unclear, to be fair.
That's about it. It's kind of a meditation on this janitor, it's a space janitor's place in life, where she is now and where she is hoping to get to, I guess. And that's kind of it. That's the plot, I think. I don't know if you guys have much more to say about that.
I thought Chris was going to jump in. What do you got?
No, because everything breaks down when we discuss the details of it, and I think more of what I have to say is going to go into themes anyway.
That's completely fair. So, like, if you get, because in light of what you just said, for going to scores, I might be looking at a 1 just because it's not really like the point of it to have a plot. Like you said, it's more of a mood piece. Mm-hmm. So I think it does a good job at that. And as you just implied, Chris, I think we're going to discuss that in more detail coming up. But for the plot itself, I think I might just give it 1 point. It doesn't deserve a 0, but again, it's not like a mark against this story.
Yeah.
But because of the nature of it and the framework and the setup and what is contained, I'm just looking at it like a 1 just because there's not much there. And there's not like, the point of it is not to have some kind of crazy plot or just, a lot of action at all, even. Yeah, so as like a setup for what's about to happen, I suppose, I feel like I will say I enjoyed this story quite a bit. It's a very short story. It's only like 4 pages long or something. But I really liked it. My score probably will not reflect that. Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, I'm probably going to get a fairly low score just because our system is not set up to deal with pieces like this. So yeah, it's difficult. This piece doesn't fit in well.
Yeah. Like, we're not set up to deal with this.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Right. Like, this is kind of like a little slice of janitor life that doesn't really have much of a story. It's just kind of...
It's more of a, like you get a feeling.
You get a feel for what this person's going through, and that's kind of it. So, we'll see. I think I'm going to come down on a 1 as well. I almost gave it a 0, but...
See, a 0 is when something is bad or is nonsensical. This was neither of those,
exactly.
To me.
It was fine. It just wasn't really much of a
or
plot.
A 0 is like when something doesn't say anything.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this definitely is getting 1 for me as well.
All right.
Okay.
That's right. Again, like, just close off, no mark against the story itself, but you said, like, because of the framework, we find ourselves on our scale just giving it a 1 in terms of plot. So, let's go into themes with you, Chris.
I think Steve-O hit it on the head where it is a meditation. It is one of those things where when in the absence of doing anything, like if you're doing something really boring, like you've done 1,000 times, where all you can do is think. Like I had library jobs where I was putting away magazines, and all I had to do was time to think. Sure. Sometimes, like today, you're in the ocean and I'm floating around and I'm thinking all sorts of whatever going out of your head. Sometimes, if you're doing something that is mundane like this, all these things go through your head, and this could be like in a moment of time, and there is no clear narrative. You get slices of her life, but it seems to me, and I think you guys touched upon it, that this is a tale of somebody searching for redemption within herself, but can find none because she keeps. I feel like as she was talking herself into something, she was simultaneously talking herself out of it. Like she was looking for an existence. She was looking for God, even though she didn't believe in God. She was looking to be among the heavens, hoping to find heaven, and so to speak. So I guess thematically it would be, searching for something unattainable. I don't.
Not like that.
I don't have anything concrete because there's no foundation for it. To put it, because this is a meditation, because this is something that could be in somebody's mind. It's regret. It's, any kind of past discourse. And there doesn't have to be a strict narrative because we weren't privy to all the other details. It's just these thoughts that are coming in out of her head. I don't really know how to put any more of anything shorter than everything that I've just said, but I'm going to give it a very strong 1 because I did understand the context. Even if I didn't understand what happened, I understand what she was doing or how her brain was working.
Sure.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. There's elements. I think themes is the strongest part of this. It's all about.
I think it's one of them. I agree.
What's going on with our character, our space janitor, and there's that redemption arc that's going on that she's trying to achieve, but what's I think purposely frustrating about this story is like we really don't know what she's trying to get redemption from. So
there's only vague details.
We don't know
included.
how she could possibly attain it, and it almost seems as though that whatever her crime was or whatever, like whatever she's trying to escape, wasn't even possibly necessarily like her fault. Like it seems like whoever molested her when she was a child or whatever, it seems like perhaps the reason she was in jail, like she mentions being in jail, perhaps the reason she was in jail, like there is a mention of a gun, perhaps she killed that guy or whatever.
In front of 2 witnesses.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So perhaps. So we don't really know.
We just don't know.
But like I love what that says about how kind of scattered her brain is about the entire thing. It comes to her in like waves, and she often, I feel like she puts a lot of blame on herself for things that seemingly perhaps are not her fault, right? Which is something that happens a lot to survivors of
trauma of some
trauma
sort.
like that. And I really love the talk about religion. I think this whole space janitor thing is a metaphor for like trying to escape the crush of like everyday life, like having to be confronted with your own trauma again and again. And I think that's like really beautiful. The trying to escape God by like leaving the planet, right? I think was like part of what she was talking about. And like not being confronted with that all the time, not being confronted with religion all the time. So like I think there's really a lot here in terms of themes that's going on, and I really liked that part of it, and I'm going to give it a very strong 1 for that.
Yeah, I largely agree. I don't have much more to add because you guys covered a lot, and like we said, in the space, a very small space, the story does cover a lot of like heftier kind of things because it's not quite stream of conscious, but it also like isn't quite like laid out for you, like you said, Steve. Like some details are blurry or like you don't have all the information for like the past events of what happened. So that means you don't know exactly what her situation is, but you do know at the slice in time, like what at least she's thinking about and how it relates to in some way to her past experiences and what happened to her. So I would say like, I'll just throw one more thing, like perhaps like escapism in isolation, because like her loneliness comes up a bit. And like, there's the last sentence or two, like sort of ties it all together in a sense, if you will. But I do agree that it manages to encapsulate all these things, and again, in a short span of time, and at least to me, like was somewhat impactful. So I'm going to give a pretty strong 1 as well.
One thing I also did notice, and I think it's pretty good in the first paragraph or two, is that she's cleaning up space dust and human debris from crevices of the space station. Makes her way through the hallway with purpose. It's in a lot of this thing where she's talking about, the astronauts who left liquid salt floating in globs, and the lady astronauts who left bloody tampons and so forth. It just seems in a lot of ways that life is kind of what's also happening to other people. There's certain aspects of life that are not happening to her, but she's cleaning up things that are happening to other people. There's a sense of life's happening to other people, but not her, but yet it had.
No, I get you. But yeah, like I said, I think it all serves to, I think we agree that there's a lot sort of condensed in here, but in a pretty well done way, thematically wise.
Yeah.
So I'll go on to Antagonist with me, which is, I don't know, like not difficult, but again, because of the nature of the story and because perhaps our scale isn't quite equipped to handle something like this in this instance, I'm looking at a 0 perhaps because like she may feel antagonized by her past, I guess. Like you guys just mentioned everything,
That's what I was gonna say,
but we just like sort of shifted into themes. So that might be enough to be antagonized, like by like the regrets of your life, or again, if not regrets, just how you feel about the actions and what happened to you at this point. Like she's certainly implied to be an elderly character, so she's looking back at her life from a long way back. But I don't know, like, if she feels antagonized by it, because she almost embraces, like, her situation, or feels somewhat at peace, or comfortable, at least, within it at the end of the story, by the time it ends. So, with that said, I'll open up to you guys. What do you think?
That's interesting that you viewed her as, like, elderly, I guess. I didn't get that from the story, but maybe it was
I thought there was a line or two that mentioned, like that she was older,
she was, like, middle
but I might be wrong about that, so
40s
sure.
or 50s or whatever. But I think the true antagonist is her past, of course, in this, as you said, and I actually think that that's a pretty good one in terms of this story.
Fair enough.
I was initially going to give this a 0, but I think that she is very much driven, and to the extent that there is any kind of catalyst in this story, because nothing really happens.
Yeah.
That her past is that catalyst and is that driving force for her, and like whether we want to call that an antagonist or not is a different story. But that's the closest that I come to one, and I think it's probably for me good enough to get a 1.
Okay.
Yeah, I was on the fence, and Scott, you had me almost talking to a 0, and then Steve reinforced a lot of stuff because I don't really think it's her past. It's definitely her past, but it's herself. I mean, there's two aspects of herself, and which obviously are going to bleed over to protagonist. And I don't really have much more to say because a lot of it was covered in themes, but it's just the fact that when you're in isolation, whether it's a job that we were a janitor, you're cleaning up, or something banal like that, all you had were you in a situation where you're around the refuge of you're alone in a crowd, except this thing is what happens to the crowd once the crowd goes home. So I'm definitely going to give it a 1. I'm going to say the antagonist. I'm going to see her past and move on to her own conscience.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I was wavering, but I think you guys made a solid enough point building on each other that it's enough for a 1 there. At the end of the day, that haunted by the regrets or again your decisions of your past is usually a pretty good antagonist, and I think in the story it serves, like you said, Chris, sort of like the aspect of her character, which we're about to get to as well. So I'm gonna end up giving it a 1, and let's go on to that with protagonist with you, Steve-O.
Well, and of course the flip side of that is her present
situation. Sure,
is the protagonist, of course, and like this is done really well in this story as well.
I agree.
You really feel kind of what she's feeling from in a very like show don't tell type of way, which is great. So I think that this story does a terrific job putting me in the shoes of this nameless space janitor, and and
that's true. They never. She doesn't. Nobody has those names.
Names. There's no dialogue. So like it's interesting. But I think that she plays this protagonist part really well, and I really appreciate that in terms of this story. It's one of the things that I appreciated the most. So that's one of my strongest ones for sure.
Yeah, I mean, because we said this is a mood piece, you have to have a character in which to bounce the mood off of, or at least have it resonate with you. So I think she was drawn quite well. Like, she's a central focus, obviously, so a lot of it is basically, like I said, not quite stream of consciousness, but focused within her own thoughts and like at least experiences, both past and her current situation being the janitor in space. So I think it was all drawn, again, quite well, impressively for, again, a short span of a story. So I'm giving it a very strong 1.
Yeah, I'm definitely giving a strong 1. I mean, the more I think about it, the more I think about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
well, I mean, the more we talk about it, I mean, because I was very affected by this piece, and I'm going to get to it in style probably more. But as a protagonist, I think she is great. She's definitely on her own journey, even if she doesn't know what that journey is. As I said, she's striving for something that's unattainable, and I don't ever once... I want to know what's happening, but by the same token, I get enough information. It's hard to say any more than what you guys do or without bleeding into style. So I'm giving it a very strong 1. She's a very, very good protagonist.
All right. Very nice. So let's go on to secondary with you, Chris.
Oh, this is
a tough one too, right?
This is a really tough one because the only secondary characters that are actually in this world that are not part of her past is the Watchmen and the bearded Russian.
Yep. And who actually show up and interact with her like somewhat directly.
Yeah,
kind of.
But they're also basically peripheral.
They're freaking furniture.
Yes, exactly.
I mean,
I know you're fond of saying that, but in this case, they're almost literally furniture.
They really are. And basically, he asks her, "Will you be lonely in space?"
Wait, what? Is there dialogue?
Well,
we'll get to that because there's no. It's he asked her, but there's no actual dialogue, so to speak. Yeah. Which also ties us back into the end about when the next time we see him, when he's got his head pressed against the window, and he said goodbye, and she doesn't understand she doesn't know what the words mean, but she understands, and then she goes off about death and that it's the opposite of being lonely, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, that is the line.
So I mean, he does serve a purpose,
but only as like like.
But what I'm saying is, does he serve a direct purpose, or is he just another texture?
Yes.
that evokes something?
I think it is more the latter case, because I think if anything, this is probably the clearest one to put a 0 to. Again, no fault of the story, but on purpose that it's not meant for that. It's not, the side characters aren't supposed to be like rounding out her story. They're just there, like you said, almost as set dressing.
Yeah, like really, they're almost like extensions of her own psyche, right? Like this is
kind of
something that I interact with in the same way that I interact with my memories, right?
Yeah.
Except for even less so. I feel like she interacts with her memories more than she interacts with these people. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's a pretty obvious 0 for me anyway. I don't know if anybody else is going to give it a 1, but
no, like again, no fault of it, but it's not like the point's not the focus. So therefore, I think we have to go defaultly just because there's not enough there to build up side characters. But again, it's not the point. So
right,
yeah,
but it's still going to have. That means it has to get a 0.
But yeah, I agree. By design, it's got to get a 0. Not that they weren't effective or didn't have any consequence, but they were just another texture rather than
exactly
their
and
own.
A part of the story.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll go on to dialogue. So again, another tricky one because, as you mentioned, Chris, there is technically no dialogue per se in it at all.
One line.
Not even like there's nothing in quotes. You know what I mean?
It's
a fucking colon. So like the line goes.
That's right. So tell us.
The bearded Russian with kind eyes asked her a question: colon, will you be lonely in space? Yes, she said, but I've always been lonely. That also has no quote on it. Yeah. So like again, it's like sort of
and
the
dialogue.
2 words he says later are just in italics.
Yeah, it's like a fraction of memory in a sense. So there's no direct interaction. Again, it's all her reflection. A lot of it. So does that mean like it's all inner monologue in a sense?
I was going to say, is inner monologue dialogue?
Or again, like we've come to
Ian,
this,
where are you?
We've come to this split like a number of times at this point on lit discussions. But I think in this case, any points I'm taking away here are going to be all shipped back into dialogue. Or sorry, style when we get to it in a second. So again, it might be a default 0 if that's the case. So again, I will open up to you guys. What do you think about it?
I'm going to give this a 0, but I think we should have a off podcast discussion about
gotta redo our
changing-
scale
for lit specifically, changing the
Definition
way
of
that
dialogue?
we look at dialogue.
Perhaps.
Because we've come up on this so many times, and it's always in lit. Like it's always in short stories because we don't really do like
because of the
short.
format.
Well, we don't really do short film, like right. So we do long form film, and unless it's a super, experimental film, well, it's not going to have no dialogue in it. So we always have something to go off of.
Sure.
There. But anyway, for this, I think I have to give it a 0. There's just nothing there in terms of dialogue. And the way that it's like currently classified, I'm going to give it a 0. But like I said, I do want to talk to you guys about this.
We have to tweak our scale a bit for cases like this. That might be true.
If I knew that he were available tonight, this would definitely be a phone a friend night. Be like, Ian, because he would definitely have to be
some insight on how we should score it. Perhaps, but
and something Steve-O said about experimental film I chuckled because I thought of 2 films we saw a couple years ago.
Anyway,
and Steve-O and I saw one of them together. It was pretty awful, but I think I totally forgotten about that. Anyway, back on the subject. I'm going to give this a 0 for all the reasons you guys said.
Yeah, I think I'm going to also do that, but perhaps you're right. Maybe we need to somewhat rethink our thought process, or at least scoring process.
I think we need to figure out why.
That's another topic for another day.
Why dialogue is important. And why we restricted it to dialogue, right?
Okay.
So we'll talk about that.
Sure. But for now, again, defaultly a 0.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go to style. In fact, with you, Steve-O.
Style, and this is great.
I agree.
Cuts back and forth between, what's happening in the present, what happened in her past, her feelings about all of that. I think that it's really well written and packs a ton in for 4 pages, a ton of like meaning and themes and just kind of
a roller coaster
feeling, that type of thing. I love the style of this. I don't know if you guys have specific things that you want to talk about, but I'm going to give it a very strong 1 for that.
Not a lot of things, but just I will mention that my first note on this is style immediately got me. That's the first thing I jotted down as I was reading the story, and that's kept up throughout. Like we said, again, this tired phrase, but it is a mood piece. It's evocative of something. Yeah. So to me, it was almost like, I don't want to make a direct comparison, but the first thing that came to mind was like sort of a Neil Gaiman kind of story, like Gaiman-esque kind of like sort of the melancholy feel to it. Like it's kind of ethereal, it's like poetic as well. I've always like descriptors written down, but it's a very, very nice style. It's very lyrical. Is the best way I can say it. So
I agree with you. Right away, I was hooked. In an inner monologue like this, where there is a lot of reflection, the character sometimes gets so self-involved. It's like, shut up. But I was with her for the journey. Obviously, I think as we all discussed, I don't really have much more to add because the style's great. I think everything we set up until now, it reflects a lot of the style. So I don't really have much
I would agree with that as well. All right, so this one's around, like you said, like probably style and themes are the strongest points of the story, and deservedly so, for sure. All right, so that'll bring us to the final recommendation. Chris, do you recommend Janitor in Space?
Shit, yeah, it's great. I really, I don't even know if it's 4 pages. I don't know. I read it on my iPad here. But I think it's great. It was very evocative. I was very moved by it, and there's a lot of detail in very few words.
Yes, well said.
And I thought it was great. It was very colorful, even though thematically it had a tendency to be dark. I loved the story. So yeah, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, this will take you like less than 15 minutes to read, and it's just a thoughtful breakdown of this slice of this weird space janitor job person that has this weird job, her life, and like what brought her to that, and how she got there, and why she got there, and like where she
to an extent, as we said, but
and what she hopes to get from it. Like you get all of the feeling around that, if not like all of the concrete reasons.
Yeah,
read it. It's good. It's really good. We'll put a link up. It's worth the 12 minutes.
Yeah, don't have much more to add, but this is technically my choice, but I never read it before. I sort of randomly selected off of a list of modern, like, quality short stories, and I definitely, I think I hit a good number there, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do recommend it. It's, like you said, it's a very short read. You can get through it, but it packs a lot in a really well done and well crafted way, so check it out, and we'll throw it up for you to check out yourselves.
Yeah.
This is another author that's written a really short story that we've covered in recent, that I'm looking forward to reading more of her work.
Yeah, for sure. So check out Amber Sparks. So I'll give out the scores. It's quite easy, at least for me this time. We all gave it the same score for the same reasons. It's 6s all around, which gives
666, number of the beast.
the number of the space beast, if you will. So yeah, like, maybe that's not, like, reflective of, like, how we thought the story was overall, but again, you're right. As we mentioned briefly, our scale perhaps need to be adjusted, or we need to adjust some things to incorporate for stories like this.
Right.
But nevertheless, it's a very good read, and do check it out. And I think that'll do it. Any final thoughts on the Janitor in Space, my friends?
Nope.
I myself am hoping to become a janitor in space when the jobs open up. When Elon Musk sends people to Mars, I'll volunteer to clean up the ships. So until then, I'll just have to be content with my loneliness here. I think. Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, of course, I've been Scott Thurlow here with Stephen Amosi.
Gonna find out how hard it is to sweep in 0G.
Mm-hmm. And Chris Morgan.
Live clean and prosper.
Yep. And we'll see you next time. Good night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.